What up, everybody? Welcome into the College Chaos Podcast. I'm Garrett Ross alongside my man Jack Mackenzie and you. And we appreciate you tuning in, whether it is live or going back and checking us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, and all that jazz. Man, we've had an interesting week in college football. The Big 12 is completely drunk at this point. Man, it's I honestly think the Big 12 is in a situation, man, where
the Big 12's drunk?
It is drunk, dude.
Outside of one game, I'm sitting here being like, these are the most sober results we could have gotten.
I know, but like, okay, so what I mean by that is right now you have a five-way tie for first place.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's a little drunk.
You have a five-way tie for first place. You have 6 teams within half a game of 500. And then you have the new kids coming in that are sitting there at the bottom with Baylor. It's I think the parity, like we knew that was the big thing, right? That's what this conference is really going to hang its hat on going forward, especially when Texas and Oklahoma leave. You had the new teams coming in, was going to be the parity across the board. And obviously, I think Utah can make a case that they feel like they're going to come in and try to run things. I'm really looking forward to watching them and K-State like become a rivalry because they're so damn similar in how they run their programs. But yeah, man, like right now, coming into the season, we were thinking what it was. I know we had Texas in the title game, right? And yep. I had Tech. I can't remember who you had.
I had Kansas State.
Yeah, Kansas State. So that's still holding.
I started feeling pretty bad about there for a second.
And you should, man. Like when you lose some of the games they did early on, you're like, what the heck is happening? And then you had Will Howard get hurt.
Look at it now, and you're like, okay, Missouri's really not bad.
No.
Oklahoma State, that was the first sign that they had figured it out, was beating Kansas State.
Yes.
I thought it was an aberration, but it's not.
No.
So, yeah, now we're looking at, so we've mentioned Texas, Kansas State. Now we mentioned Oklahoma State. The only other 2 teams that I feel like have a realistic shot, even though there's another one we could add, are OU and Kansas.
See, Kansas is 3-2. So
I know.
Yeah.
Which means I'm forgetting a 4-1 team in conference, Iowa State.
Yes. So, but like right now, I was thinking about this. So I feel like this upcoming weekend is going to be crucial, and we're going to learn the future. I think we're going to learn after this weekend if the Big 12 played itself out of having any teams qualify for the playoff, because Kansas State's heading into Austin, and I think that's a game that the Wildcats can win.
I think it's pretty early to say that, simply because the 2 teams with the best record in the league are the 2 biggest brands, and they both only have 1 loss.
Yeah, but I think both of them after this weekend will have 2.
Now that's a bridge we'll have to cross when we get there.
Yes.
But we might as well talk about it now because, I mean, hey, there's every chance that they both have another loss coming out of this weekend. One has Bedlam, their rivalry game, that they're leaving behind.
Yes.
And they have to go play on the road for it.
And Ollie Gordon, man, like I don't understand why it took so long to get him rolling. Because when we were coming into the season, we were talking about Oklahoma State, looking at their roster. I was like, okay, well, you have Ollie Gordon, who's really good, and then you have Presley, and that was about it. That was the only thing, because we knew the situation with Bowman. He's a serviceable. He's a game manager, right? And he's doing a good job of that. He's really efficient at doing that. But yeah, so I was kind of weird to see how long it took them in Stillwater to get things clicking and rolling. But once they figured out their bread and butter, I mean, they become a threat. And then their schedule after Bedlam, you get Houston, UCF, and what is it, Cincy or BYU. Like they should literally run through all of them.
We knew going into the year they had one of the softest schedules in the Big 12. Frankly, I think we'd be looking at their season a hell of a lot differently if they just did not get blown the crap out by South Alabama at home.
Yes.
Because like that's a 5-alarm fire right there. That's
yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's 2 other ways to put it. It's just I do think that they struggled early with one, not wanting to put a crap ton of early carries on a back who I don't think they truly believed they had like any playoff aspirations, which meant non-conference meant nothing if they believed they could get 6 conference wins.
Right. And I think that was kind of like the mind games of Mike Gundy in a way, right? Like he realized the situation. He knew everybody was sleeping on them. And that's kind of why he just kind of played with his roster, tinkered around in the non-con, and then used it to figure it out.
It at this point, it almost feels like it had to be tinkering around. Otherwise,
Definitely.
it's like Gundy didn't know, and then all of a sudden he figured it out, which is a little more beyond belief because Gundy's been doing this for so long.
And that's the thing. Like, that's where I struggle with Mike Gundy because it's like I know he's a really good coach, right? And I understand the streak speaks for itself, but it's the hurdles of Oklahoma State to me. They get so close at times to winning the Big 12 championship or even just sniffing the playoff or and then they'll lose some random ass game to somebody and they find themselves in like the Texas Bowl or whatever. And it's like, okay.
I feel like this could be a year where that happens to them.
I think it could too.
I can easily see this team making it to Arlington, especially since they have the tiebreaker with Kansas State.
Yes.
And then just losing that game. I don't know if it would be heartbreaking like the last time, but.
Well, here's the deal because, all right, so if that's the case, who do you think? All right, so I think, because I really do, I think that Oklahoma State right now, if they get past Bedlam this week, have the easiest path to make it to Arlington. I would not be surprised if the Pokes are playing for the Big 12 championship.
Question.
Okay, so on the flip side, who do you see them playing? Would it be, does it come down to, because to me it comes down to this game between Texas and Kansas State. I think the winner of that game goes to Arlington and plays for the Big 12 championship. And I think that's where you get in a situation where, because I feel like Kansas State will beat Texas. I do. And I feel like that's going to put the Horns and the Big 12 to bed with the college football playoff. And then you have a situation where you have Kansas State and Oklahoma State playing for the Big 12 championship.
My issue is that Kansas State still has a matchup at Kansas.
Yes. Yes.
There's a decent chance Kansas drops another, which opens the door for Texas because Texas has the Red River win, which means they top OU if they're both at 2 losses. The real thing is what happens if there's a 3-way tie between Kansas, Texas, and OU for that second spot? That would be incredible, but I don't know what the odds of that are because you're asking Kansas State to beat Texas, who yes, they should be on their backup quarterback Malik Murphy,
right?
But it's still down in Austin, and Texas still has more skill position talent. They're playing good defense. They've got a hell of a defensive line. The defensive line versus offensive line matchup for Kansas State's O-line, like that'll be. If you want to watch high quality trench football, like it should be there. Yeah, it just looking at that, it's a cluster, and it's going to be interesting to see because if we see both Red River teams lose this weekend, the Big 12 is about to get crazy, and yes, they're likely out of the playoff at that point.
No, I really do. I think they are going to end up out of the playoff, and that's the risk. Well, I think that's when the Big 12 they'll benefit from the 12-team playoff going to expand it. Because if it was going to stay 4, I think you would see this be the same thing over and over and over again with the Big 12. So that's definitely going to benefit them.
I will say it's not like what conference is going to step up and get multiple bids. Like I think the Big Ten's in the best position because right now, and I know how strong the top of the Pac-12 has been, but I'm looking at an undefeated Washington team that's looked like sick. They looked sick. I honestly think from what I've seen on like Reddit that people are claiming that there's a bug or something running through the whole campus out at UW. And frankly, it would explain a lot if that's what has been up with Washington these past couple of weeks. But they've got a trip to USC this week.
I don't think that's going to be a problem, dude. Like I have lost all faith in USC. I think
they put up 15 points on Arizona State.
I don't care.
15.
I don't care.
You have a Heisman contending. You're supposed to have Heisman contending quarterback, and you can only put up 15.
Yeah, but I get that. I do.
I'm not saying that this is absolutely a USC win. Don't get me wrong there. Mm-hmm. It just scares me, and it scares me for the Pac-12 because then you're going to have one of Oregon and Washington have 2 losses.
Yes,
you're not getting into the playoff like that. I don't think.
All right, hold on, because let's see here. I think you would because
also Oregon has to play Oregon State still.
I think Oregon has found their sea legs after that loss.
I think they should win that game.
Yes.
Do not get me wrong, but a rivalry game at the end of the year is nothing to scoff at.
No, all right. Also, ultimately, what you're saying with all this is the Pac wouldn't have no chance of 2 teams, right?
The Big Ten would have 2 teams.
They would have 2
SEC
teams.
Would have 1 team.
And then you're looking at Florida State.
Probably, but there's still some
I think Oregon finds a way to get in, honestly. I think Oregon wins out, and if they even rematch, if it's possible for them to rematch with Washington, I think they beat Washington.
Like at that point, it's ACC versus Pac-12,
right?
2 Big Tens and the SEC.
Yeah, and then I think because if it comes down to that, honestly, I feel like the winner of Ohio State and Michigan would X out the one team there, and you would end up with essentially Georgia if they went out, which more than likely they are.
1 loss Oregon, 1 loss Florida State, 1 loss Ohio State. Who's in? That's the conversation I'm looking at here. Ohio State has the best resume right now. In all likelihood, they'll be number 1 tomorrow.
So you're talking about one loss Ohio State after beating Michigan?
After losing to Michigan.
After losing, that would be okay.
Aren't they undefeated right now?
Yeah, because they beat Penn State.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, are you really going to tell me that they're going to hold out 1 loss Ohio State with their resume versus Pac-12 champ, 1 loss Oregon, and ACC champ, 1 loss Florida State? I don't know where Florida State's 1 loss was coming from, but to beat out 1 loss Ohio State, who doesn't make the Big Ten title game,
right?
You're going to have to be at least a 1 loss conference champ. Possibly you're going to have to be an undefeated conference champ.
So, that's a good point. I think
that is 1 loss Ohio State is the highest bar.
And they're going to get the pass.
Clear.
Yeah.
Now, 1 loss Michigan is not as high of a bar. So, you're probably looking at the game at the end of the regular season being like, we're about to see how high of a bar a conference champion is going to have to clear.
Right.
To make the playoff.
No, that's fair. So I think you're in a situation with that where you could be the Big 12 and the Pac on the outside looking in, which that's been the consistent theme throughout this whole course of the 4-team playoff in general. But both of those conferences will always find themselves on the outside looking in.
Yep.
So as far as this past weekend in the Big 12, how we got to this point where you have this cluster of teams. You had Oklahoma roll into Lawrence, and the Jayhawks, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, are able to knock off Oklahoma. I'm really surprised. Oklahoma has struggled. They haven't looked great. I feel like they emptied their clip against Texas, and they've been trying to find that magic ever since that game. The way that game started in Kansas, you had Dylan Gabriel throwing the pick 6, and then you had the storm delay, and it was just and Oklahoma's defense to me, when you heard, because they've struggled tackling. I know Stutzman is good at the linebacker position, but overall that defense is still got a ways to go. They have a lot of young talent to get to where Brent Venables wants to get them, but that's the kind of the Achilles heel for them. And when you knew the weather situation, you knew that you have guys like Neal and them for Kansas who could run the rock. I thought that kind of created a little more parity in this game, but ultimately I didn't think Kansas without Jalen Daniels was going to be able to beat them, but hats off to them for doing that.
I think it was absolutely, and I don't say this lightly because Venables is a very damn good coach.
Oh, yeah.
I think he got out coached.
Leipold, I think Leipold's the best. Him and Kleiman have an argument for the best coaches in the Big 12.
I think they are the best coaches in the Big 12.
The only reason I would say argument is because you have to throw Gundy in there.
I think they both have arguments for being top 10 coaches nationally.
Oh, hell yeah.
If not top 5.
Especially for what they're how they navigate everything they're dealing with.
The resource disparity between them and the actual top programs.
Oh, it's unreal.
The bang for the buck that they are getting for 2 programs in the state of Kansas.
Yes.
A
basketball state.
It's amazing to me. Absolutely amazing to me. I will say, just the offensive play calling and the willingness to be experimental and just how much they embrace their personnel at Kansas, where they're like, we don't necessarily have the best offensive linemen. We don't have bad ones. We don't have the best ones. We are running a backup QB who is he has track star speed, but he's still our backup. So we're going to lean on this and that. We're going to have to find ways to scheme guys open. We're going to use unorthodox plays where we motion our quarterback back in from being out wide in a wildcat set, hand the ball off to him, and then he'll bootleg back out and throw it. Stuff like that. It's just, you are trying to find every way to get an advantage. It is, to me, it's a clinic in a coach finding every which way he can to have his guys prepared and get an advantage without overdoing it. He doesn't rely on it. It's a nice little quirk, but he has so many of them that they're ready to execute.
But here's the thing with that, though. To me, when I think about that, and those are all great points, but I think that's how they coach, because that's what they were doing at the D3 level when they were winning natties. Like, that's just regular. That's how they coach, And then you bring that philosophy, that mindset, and you have better talent than that.
I think it just goes, that's a one-off this week.
No. That's what I'm saying. I think that's what makes them
that's
unique.
What they are.
That's what they are.
That's
they
what I'm trying to say. Is
it's cool as
I'm
hell.
amazed by it. I love watching it. Like, I almost want to adopt Kansas football at this point. It's not like, because they're an underdog who's winning. It's like, honestly, Kansas basketball annoys me enough to make me want their football to lose. It's just like, when you watch something like that, you want to watch more of it. Yeah. It is entertaining.
It's college. That's
fun.
The greatness of college football. Yes.
Like, I don't know another way to put it. Boy.
And the camera went dark on us. But anyway, another big game that you had picked West Virginia, and I took UCF. That's one that I regretted. And when we went back on our picks, and we were like, we always go through and say, is there a game that you would like to change? That was one that really stood out to me. UCF has been so disappointing to me this year. Like, I knew that there would be hurdles. I understand that. But I thought they would come in and be better than what they are.
I mean, let's look at their season with a realistic point of view. You lose your quarterback.
Definitely. That's brutal.
And your backup, he's solid. He was a solid group of 5 starter. I don't think he was like an amazing group of 5 starter at USF. So coming over, now he's up a level, and they couldn't cope. The thing is, they've been very close to winning a lot of their games. Honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
their run defense is what's costing them.
Yes. Outside of Kansas, like, what games have they been out of?
None, really. I mean,
they should have beat Baylor.
Yes.
They had every chance of beating OU.
Yeah.
And when you look at the score of this West Virginia game, take into account the terrible game that Plumlee played, that's why they lost. Like, honestly, they might have won that game with McLean.
Do you think they should have kept, do you think Plumlee's 100% yet?
I don't know. But, I mean, look at his first interception. Mm-hmm. Freak play. Like, that should have just been caught by his receiver.
Right.
So I don't blame him on that one. The one that he threw, I think it was his third one, absolutely blame on him. The second one, I believe, was the long one that just looked like he couldn't get it there.
Right.
He should have eaten that. I blame him for throwing that ball, but it wasn't necessarily like a terrible read. He just should not have thrown it.
Yeah.
Like, bad decision, not necessarily bad read. Bad read on the third one, and then a fumble. So I don't think those are necessarily injury-related turnovers. I think those are maybe it's rust-related turnovers, not being up to speed.
Could be.
But that's the most I will associate with them with the injury. So, I think it was a bad game from your starting quarterback.
Yeah.
If you don't have his worst game of the year, then you're really in this one. I mean, every time I was looking at, because I could only find West Virginia's highlights from it. Every time there was a turnover, I was like, wait, but they're down 3.
Right.
So they spaced it out at the end. That's how they got the scoreline they had. This game was a lot closer than it should have been, frankly. But West Virginia was running the ball fairly at will. They were getting 5.7 yards per carry. Not amazing, not terrible at all by any means. But UCF was actually matching that number.
Well, they have good backs. UCF has.
It's not a matter of them not having good backs. It's everything I'm looking at is when you watch the highlights, it's oh man, they can't stop West Virginia's run. But West Virginia wasn't stopping them. They were just getting turnovers.
Right.
The turnovers is what killed them. UCF is not terrible.
No, I'm not saying they're terrible.
They have found ways to lose games.
Yeah, that's what's been disappointing to me, because I think Gus Malzahn, his resume to me speaks for itself. He's a hell of a coach, and they're going to be fine because they're recruiting their ass. And I know, go ahead, because you don't agree with that, right? Because he's made some bonehead ass calls.
I agree. What I'm saying is I'm looking at this and I'm outside of the Baylor game, which having that big of a collapse, that falls on everyone. Every other loss, I'm man, I could probably just chalk that up to execution. That's not on Gus. That's where Gus can turn it around recruiting wise and just be
he's already
just be look, we don't have the guys who are executing at a high enough level. You think you can be one of those guys? Get on over to Orlando.
Yeah. No, I think they're going to be fine. I think they are. I would
not be surprised if they're a candidate for like the biggest turnaround next year.
Oh, yeah.
Because of how much they're underperforming record-wise this year compared to like the way they're actually playing.
Right. I would agree with that. I completely agree with that. Other games on the docket, you had Texas just obliterating BYU. I didn't think BYU had a chance in this one, but the fact that they were just held to 6, like that's pretty impressive by Texas defense.
Which is also why I don't think it's a foregone conclusion Kansas State goes into Austin next week and wins.
I think the matchup, man, with Kansas State and Texas, I think they match up really well with them.
If Texas has to chase the game, I feel better.
Right.
But if Texas jumps out, I'm not saying Kansas State can't catch up. I just feel better about it throwing Texas off balance with a backup quarterback if they have to chase the game.
Right.
So.
No, I agree with that. But yeah, Texas steamrolls BYU. Iowa State, the other team in the mix right now, I think to me, when I look at this team, they are in my opinion, they are the worst team at 4-1 in the Big 12. I just dude, I can't put much into what they did against Baylor. Baylor's bad.
Yep.
Rocco Bett is not that good of a quarterback. Eli Sanders is, he's good, but he's not like a game changer at running back.
I don't know how many of these 4-1 teams, or frankly, even the 3-2 teams, Iowa State can run the ball on like they need
I don't either.
to support a quarterback at the level of Becht. So
I think they're going to find themselves. I think that over the next couple of weeks, let's see, they have Kansas. I think Kansas can beat Iowa State. That's in Ames though, and that's a game at night in Ames. That's always weird. But I think Kansas is playing better. I think this is a game where you see that flip and Kansas jump Iowa State and make a case as one of the top teams. And Iowa State finds themselves in the middle of the pack. Then you go to BYU.
That's a Big 12 elimination game.
Yeah, it really is.
Because I can easily believe that the second team in the Big 12 title game would have 2 losses. 3 losses is a bridge too far for me.
No, I think you're going to see 2 teams in the Big 12 title game with 2 losses. I think that's what it's going to play out.
I'm not convinced of that, but I think someone's going to make it. I think someone's going to go undefeated the rest of the way. I'm not sure who that is, but I think someone's going to go undefeated.
If it is, it's going to be Oklahoma State. I really believe that. If Oklahoma State could get past Oklahoma.
State absolutely has the easiest path to it, but it's not like Oklahoma has a tough path.
No, they don't.
Looking at their schedule, it's West Virginia at BYU and TCU. West Virginia's the toughest one on there in my book.
Yeah.
I don't think TCU has their crap together this year. They've got it more than a lot of other schools in the Big 12, but yeah. So I do think Oklahoma State has the easier schedule, so it's pretty much whoever wins that. I think they're making it there with only 1 lot. I do think the winner of Bedlam is going undefeated the rest of the way.
I can see that. I'll agree with that. That's really, yeah. I can't really argue that. So, that's also kind of an elimination game in Bedlam, essentially, right?
No.
You don't think so?
No. Oklahoma State loses, and they're still feeling pretty good to be at 2 losses there at the end.
True. Yeah, because they lose that, and they can still run the table.
Yeah, and they didn't play Texas, so you don't have a head-to-head tiebreaker there. They've got the head-to-head tiebreaker with Kansas State.
Yes. Yeah, the Big 12's drunk, dude. This is so...
The Big 12 and the tiebreakers for the championship game are going to be insane.
All right, so this is a situation this year, and it's going to be the case going forward where do you like the Big 12 going away from everybody playing each other because you don't necessarily have...
You just can't.
I know you can't feasibly, but I know people in Big 12...
I hate it.
Yeah.
I am a small conference proponent. I am have 10-team conferences, play 9 conference games, get a rematch in the title game, and that should sort itself out.
Right.
The 2 best teams should be playing the title game every year if you play everyone in the conference. And you know what? If it's not the 2 best teams, well, then it's the 2 teams who most deserved it because they earned it. And then they get to have a rematch to say, okay, no, for real, who is better?
No, I get that.
The way the Big 12 was at 10 teams was amazing as far as structure of a conference.
Right.
I'm sad to see everyone in college football just be like, no to that. Also, it lended itself amazingly to college basketball. Double round robin.
Yeah.
So, Yeah.
That's where you're more sad. I know that's where you're more sad of going away.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get into that as we transition out of football season. Like, I'm sure there'll be a nice little dead period before the Bulls where we can really dive into some basketball, and we'll have that stuff over on the college basketball channel that the 365 Sports family has. But getting back to this, as far as like, how do you think the Big 12 will navigate being at 16 teams next year? I have no idea. What I would love to see is like what was it, the like 3-3-5 schedule. I think that's a pretty solid one.
I think everybody should adopt what the Big Ten did. I mean that I think they figured out the best way to schedule people.
You say when there's a chance of like a 4-way tie for the next couple of years
in the Big Ten?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there could be. I haven't really thought about that. But I like their schedule model though.
Like at the end of the day, like yes, it's all of this is cool. We just haven't seen it in practice, so we haven't like lived through the like. Oh,
I think it's gonna take a couple of years and then it'll work its way out.
Yeah, that's the hope. It will be interesting to see how teams get paired up and if they make anything outside of like the Holy War permanent. Because I don't know how many matchups in this new Big 12 are like this has to happen every year. In football, I know Kansas State feels a bigger rivalry with Iowa State because Kansas has been bad for so long. Baylor TCU is probably like the second biggest rivalry in the new conference.
Yeah, I think they're going to make every team in Texas play each other, and then you
or
try
maybe
to
not second biggest, like Arizona State, and
that's
BYU,
Utah. That's the one.
Like, yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like, man, there's not like a lot of rivalries where I'm like this has to happen.
Yeah,
I'm sure I could fill up Kansas State slate right now with like Iowa State, Kansas, and Colorado. But I don't know. Like I don't know how everyone feels about all these things. So that'll be interesting to see how like they decide. At least, if not permanent opponents, they'll like for these next 4 years. These are the ones you're going to play every year, or whatever the model is. It will suck when, and I'm going to say when like conference title game comes down to. Okay, but this team scored more points.
Right.
Like that, to me, that's lame.
That takes the,
Like, yes, I love watching a high-scoring game of football. Do not get me wrong. But if you get to the same record playing bruise 'em, slow, grinded-out football, why should you be punished for finding a different way to do things than score more points?
Right.
It's like
take the Iowa approach.
like, how much do we talk about Iowa?
I know.
A good bit.
I know. It's crazy.
They are an abomination to offense always. And yet we cover them. We laugh. We have fun with it. That's part of what makes college football awesome is the variety of ways to do it.
Yeah.
So like when you have even point differential, I still feel like that favors teams that score more.
Yeah.
Because I could blow a team out, but it would be like, what, 20-0 if I'm Iowa?
If you're lucky.
Versus a 28-point blowout for a team that scores more, but absolutely gives up more on defense. Yeah. Like, okay, they score more. They scored an extra touchdown. You got a kick return at the end of the game because you've got a better group of skill players, something like that. It lends itself to the higher scoring teams, no matter if you use point differential points for. So I don't know what else you could use. Like, at this point, it's almost like, can you develop some kind of like ELO ranking system? But then you have to reset that every year.
Yeah.
Which I don't believe that's conducive to an ELO ranking system. I believe that has to have like so many games played. So my point is like, I think everyone's going to find out very quickly in the next 2 years as these conferences have gotten big enough for it that while divisions suck in their own right, not having divisions
it's going to be
is going to be better for matchups, worse for tiebreakers, and everyone's going to realize how bad the tiebreakers are.
Right.
But it's not going to send conferences back to a smaller size. Anyway, I feel like I went on for like 5 minutes there.
No, I liked it. It was fun. All right, so we're going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to get into some of the other storylines from around the nation this past weekend. Also, look ahead at some of the upcoming games. You have a great slate of games coming up in Week 10. And a little Heisman talk. We'll do that as well. You're listening to the College Chaos Podcast. Welcome back into the College Chaos Podcast. Garrett, Ross, Jack, Mackenzie here with you, and we are going to look around the nation at some of the other games that unfolded, some of the funny storylines that came out of this past weekend as well. Some of the big matchups coming up in Week 10 after it was kind of a letdown of a week as far as games compared to last week, and then heading into this week, we are going to make up for that. But a game that you and I picked, Jack, was Oregon and Utah, and I think we both took the Ducks.
I definitely took the Ducks.
The way that they just absolutely obliterated Utah to me was kind of shocking. I thought Utah's defense would hold up a little better against, and I know Bo Nix is cold, like they are really, really good, but just seeing the way Utah has played all year long in their defense, I thought they would do a better job of kind of holding the Ducks at bay. Are you surprised of how the way Oregon was able to take control and just ride to that 35-6 win?
I mean, yes and no. Like, the 6 part of that win doesn't really surprise me. Like, their offense has not been in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any other way to put it. Now, did I think their defense could hold them to like 27, 28? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much different this conversation should be if Oregon scored 1 fewer touchdown. Like, so I guess I'm going with no. It's not shocking.
Right.
I think that it could have been closer if Oregon had like made more mistakes, but they didn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't want to sound like, oh yeah, I knew. Because I didn't know.
Right.
But this doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
It really doesn't shock me because one team is the Pacific Iowa. and the other is like, I don't even know, like the Pacific, I don't know, LSU or something.
Dude, they're off. Yeah, LSU's offense is cold. But yeah,
like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
I get it.
Defense has some question marks, but when they show up, like,
yeah, they're hard to beat.
Good luck.
Yeah. Another game that, in this one, I'm not really surprised of. There was a lot of talk going into the cocktail party. You had Georgia. I didn't think that Florida could beat them by any means, but I thought Florida would have a better game than they did. They jumped out to a 7-0 lead and then just watched the Dogs absolutely cruise past them with 36 straight points. The way they're playing right now, Georgia, without Brock Bowers, is pretty impressive. Carson Beck continues to get better each week. And the reason I want to bring this up is because when you look ahead to this week, some of the better games across the nation, I
thought he said we were talking about this upcoming week.
No, yeah, because one of them is Mizzou at Georgia. And Mizzou has been, I think they've exceeded expectations all year long. And it really started to me with that win over K-State. But at the same time, I feel like there's only 2 teams on Georgia's schedule that have a chance of pushing them in the regular season. And it's going to be this week against Mizzou, and then it's going to be Ole Miss in a couple of weeks.
If it's going to be a week, it's going to be this week. I have no faith in Ole Miss.
None whatsoever?
Why should I?
I mean, I think Ole Miss I get it because, I mean, Kirby is significantly better coach than Lane Kiffin. But I just feel like Ole Miss has proven that they can beat they beat LSU, but that was just a piss poor matchup. You don't think Ole Miss can even push Georgia? Not at all.
There is nothing about their balance or their style of play. I say balance because I don't think they have balance.
No, it's just pretty much Quinshon.
It's just Quinshon, and it's just we have to outscore you. And I don't think that Georgia's defense is going to let what happened to LSU happen to them.
Right.
Like, I don't I also don't think it's a game that Georgia will overlook in any way. I think that enough people are like, man, Ole Miss is probably one of the last teams on their schedule.
They're gonna make an example out of them.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna go well for Mizzou either. So don't get me wrong.
Right.
But there's something about Mizzou where I feel like they're cooking, they're having a good year. They caused problems for Georgia last year. And while Georgia should be absolutely ready for the way that they caused them problems last year, I just think that possibly Drink has a better grasp of how to compete in a head-to-head matchup in a single given week with Georgia than Kiffin does.
No, that's fair. I would agree with that.
There are times where I feel like Kiffin gets either too caught up in we're going to try and attack this specific thing or we're going to do what we do best, and he doesn't find the middle ground of mixing it all together to just be like, okay, well, they're really focusing on that, so we're going to counter with this, and they're focusing on that. Not like you can't counter, just like there's something about Kiffin where I feel like he gets hyper-fixated and overthinks.
Yeah.
And I just think that Drink is probably a bit more balanced of a coach.
Yeah. Okay.
Either way, I think Georgia's getting through the regular season undefeated.
Another game this coming week that Clemson, man, like we knew the wheels were falling off, but to watch them fall to the way it has gone has been really remarkable. Like they don't have any identity. They have no playmakers. Cade Klubnik looks completely lost and like he's not getting properly developed. I don't know what the hell the future is for Dabo. I just to see this program be 4-4 is mind-blowing to me. And then you have a Notre Dame team coming into Death Valley, the fake Death Valley this weekend. I think this is a situation where Notre Dame just
curb stomps,
beats the hell out of them in a similar fashion to what they did with USC. Like, what do you think? Can Clemson? Is there any hope of them getting this thing back? Not back on the rails this year, but like going forward and getting people to buy in. Like, what are your thoughts on Dabo in the future of Clemson?
My first thing right now is they are by no means anywhere near a lock to make a bowl game. They've got Notre Dame. Georgia Tech, they should win. That should be
Georgia Tech just coming off an upset. Like Haynes King just balled out.
So Georgia Tech should be a win for Clemson, but then they have North Carolina and
they're reeling.
South Carolina, which is a rivalry game, and neither team looks good this year.
No.
Which means I think it's another all bets are off kind of game. Like there are none of these games where I'm just like, absolutely, they should crush them.
Right.
And they're sitting at 4 wins with 4 games left. They have to win half of them to make a bowl game.
Yeah.
We're talking about a team that we thought might have an outside shot at the playoffs and would be competing with Florida State for the ACC this year. And now we're looking at them like, are they going to make a bowl? I'm saying all of this to like take it back to the Dabo discussion of they don't make a bowl this year. There should be some serious conversations had. And frankly, his AD should be having not necessarily an ultimatum with him, but something along the lines of, Dabo, you have to adapt to where the game is now. And where the game is now is transfer portal.
See, I completely agree with you. On that.
Because he's clearly not getting the talent he needs to get out of high school anymore.
No, and here's my thing. Is that because I think the conversation with the AD you just mentioned needs to happen. I think it has to happen. I would be shocked if it hasn't happened already. My only thing is he seems so set in his ways and that ego would get in. I feel like if they have that conversation, his ego would still get in the way and he would hang it up before having to adapt. Because I think if he goes back on his words, he's going to feel like he's contradicting himself. And I just feel like there's a mind complex there.
I don't know. I don't pay enough attention to Dabo and Clemson to know if he's either going to go like, well, at the end of the day, this is the business and it's what I need to do. And I'm going to try and do it in the best way that I can that, prioritizes human beings and all that, like kind of a person over player kind of thing, but
that works.
Adapting it. Wasn't trying to get into that. Just like, I don't know if he's the kind of guy who's going to adapt and say what he needs to say to make those changes and like try and seem consistent, or if he's going to be like, this isn't what I wanted to do. So if you don't want me and no one else wants me, then I'll hang it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not looking good for him right now.
No, it's really not. Like, who's in a worse position right now? Like, just
this is what I thought Oklahoma State would be looking at this year, frankly.
Great point. I completely agree with you. I thought that
it's really funny to watch a national championship winning coach putting himself, frankly, back into the conversation of like who is the better coach with a guy who hasn't won a natty.
Right.
Because usually that natty's just kind of like but rings. But seriously, I'm sitting here and I'm like, Gundy has had a lot of success at a program less known for success, frankly, than Clemson.
Yes.
And he keeps adapting. It keeps rolling on. They keep having shots at conference titles. He needs to fucking win more of those. Right. But like, I don't think it's a conversation you shouldn't have, which I think is kind of, frankly, embarrassing for Dabo.
Yeah.
You should have more longevity if you're able to reach those heights.
Yeah, I mean, because
it's not a scandal.
No, but even like a few years ago, right? Like you had all the talk about Dabo was on top of the world, and he had Clemson humming, and then we always count down to Nick Saban's demise or his retirement or whatever, and it was, Dabo's just going to swing. Dude, if I'm Bama and I'm looking at them, I'm like, there's no way in hell I would consider Dabo to be a replacement for him.
I know. I was hoping you'd get there.
No way in hell, dude.
Well, I don't think he's going to outlast Saban.
I don't think he is either. That's another crazy
That's
point.
what I mean.
That's insane. The fact that we're
like Dabo could be done in college football before Saban's done. And like, I'm not saying done. I mean, like he could be easily doing well at a group of 5 school after this, just because
he would honestly probably go to like coach high school.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying is like, I can see Dabo being done as a top level coach.
I completely agree.
In college football before Saban decides to hang it up.
Completely agree with you. And that is insane to think of. Like him, Dabo, and Jimbo Fisher feel like they're in the same sinking boat right now. And
I wouldn't go that far.
I
think they're in 2 different sinking boats that are sinking.
They might be sinking. Yeah, they might be sinking oppositely. but they're in these little pirogues just out here sinking. But yeah, dude, it's crazy to think of it. The fall of Clemson, it's kind of laughable, but it's sad too at the same time. The biggest game this weekend is not just Homer pick, but LSU and Bama.
Oh my God.
What?
You should have just said you wanted an SEC segment this week, man.
I didn't. I was just looking at the best 10 matchups. Look, okay.
And what were the last 3 matchups?
We've talked. Okay, so the other matchups on here are Texas and Kansas State. I think we went in at length. What, or do you want to go? We can go in more and leave.
I'm just giving you crap.
And we had Bedlam. That was it. That was it. That was it. I'm not even going to touch A&M and Ole Miss. I don't want to touch that.
Oh my gosh, man!
But
I thought you were going to there for a sec. I'm just like he's running through the SEC.
No, because I was looking at this. There just are a lot of good SEC games. I mean, I think you have Washington and SC. Washington should beat them. Oregon State, Colorado, who really cares? Like, same thing with Penn State, Maryland. I mean, that's cute. Ohio State, Rutgers, who really, that shouldn't even be on here. But
Louisville, Virginia Tech, 2-1 loss ACC
that should be on here, but that's not on. Both of those teams, Virginia Tech.
That's a battle for an ACC title game spot.
Is what Fry and them have been able to do at Virginia Tech has been so incredible. Like, and then just it's fun for me, and it's probably fun for you as well. I don't know, but to watch Kyron Drones and see the success he's had out there.
I've had time to watch.
Okay, well, I've caught a few of them, and it's been fun to watch him. I'm happy to see him having success up there in Blacksburg. But
I will say, if Louisville loses that game, everyone's lost because we've already seen Virginia Tech lose to Florida State.
Yes,
I don't think they're necessarily going to do any better in a rematch.
No,
and
no,
we won't get Louisville, Florida State unless it happens in the title game.
Yeah,
so that would be sad to me is not getting that game.
I would agree with that. I would agree.
I would hope you'd agree.
But all right, the biggest game of the weekend,
Purdue, Michigan.
Yeah, it's definitely Purdue, Michigan. Definitely Purdue, Michigan.
So we haven't talked about Washington, USC much.
Okay, Washington, USC.
No, let's talk about.
No,
you're right. LSU, Bama is the biggest game of the week. Man, you found a way to make me say it.
Okay. Oh, I did. You like that, huh?
I did not like that.
But
No,
you did. You enjoyed your night in Death Valley. The real Death Valley. You had fun down
but
there.
this one in there. It's in Bryant Denny.
I know. And Bama has not looked good at Bryant Denny. I know it took a miracle. I wouldn't say a miracle. It took a second half comeback to put Tennessee to bed. And I was totally wrong on my philosophy of not picking teams to win after they played Bama. Like Tennessee made me look like a fool with Kentucky, and Kentucky looked like crap in that game. That was stupid. But
I don't know what about Kentucky told you they were going to win.
I thought that
Don't pick what team's going to lose. Pick what team's going to win.
I know. I drank the Kool-Aid and my own backwards ass philosophy of not picking teams after they play Bama, and it bit me. But LSU rolls into Bryant Denny this year. LSU has the best offense in the nation. Their defense sucks. And Bama, while they don't have the talent, it's crazy. I don't think Bama talent-wise can match up with LSU at all. But the coaching scares the hell out of me because LSU beat Alabama last year. Nick Saban does not lose to teams in back-to-back years. He's already got one loss at home this year, and I couldn't tell you in the last time Bama lost 2 home games in the season. I just there's no way I could tell you that. It's unreal to even think about.
How often do they lose more than one game in the regular season?
I know.
Like usually, if they get that second loss, it's on a neutral field.
Yeah, and that's very rare. This game scares the hell out of me. I don't see Bama's defense being able to slow down Jaden Daniels. And he right now has made a case, which a lot of people have him as in the running for the Heisman leader. I don't think he has that signature win, and I think that's kind of what's hindering him for that. If he gets this while Bama is still down, I think that would be the signature win that could make a case for him to be the Heisman front runner.
I mean,
but dude, this matchup scares me.
I'll say my bit about this game, then I'd love to get into the Heisman stuff real quick.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who really should be considered the leader for that.
Right.
I don't like the matchup for LSU simply because I think you're putting the weak point for both teams against each other, defense versus Alabama's offense. And I like the coach on one sideline better than I like the coach on the other.
Me too.
Not like I am not impressed by Brian Kelly sometimes, but it's a sometimes thing.
Very sometimes.
Like last year, I was like, oh, shoot. He found a way to beat Bama ahead of schedule.
Very ahead of schedule.
So, like, if they had lost last year and then not like that they're going to beat, it's just like it would have made more sense if like they lost that game last year, they look like they're building this year, and they find a way to do it, even though it's at Bama. It's at Bama. The better coach is on the Bama sideline. The weaknesses match up, which means I think it's going to come down to coaching.
Yes.
It's just like it can go either way. It's LSU, Bama. It just does not feel like anything's lining up for it to go LSU's way.
I agree with you because through the course of, and this is what made me nervous about bringing Brian Kelly over was if you go back and look at his whole tenure, whether it was at Cincinnati or what he had, and I know he's the winningest coach, which is fucking insane to think of, the winningest coach at Notre Dame, but every time there was a big game, he cannot, like he does not win the big game. You look at the past 2 years, you've lost to Florida State, which were a crucial game, not crucial, but the bigger matchups on your schedule, you just don't live up to it. That's just kind of the where I'm at with him, man. Like I don't trust him in big situations, and that's what makes me nervous about the trajectory of LSU with him because I think they're going to win a lot of games year in and year out, and they're going to make a lot of New Year's Six games or whatever. But I don't know when it comes down to like alpha versus alpha for a natty if he's got what it takes from a coaching standpoint to get them over the hump, and that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that was one of his biggest problems with Notre Dame is he couldn't
Absolutely.
He didn't look like he was going to get them over the hump. I think it's especially damning to think like, hey, he's got a guy who's a Heisman candidate at quarterback, and you're still questioning if he can get a team over the hump. I know the problem seems to be mostly on the other side of the ball, but I digress because I do want to get into the kind of that Heisman conversation and like. I'm sitting. I watched a whole LSU game where the offense was going off, and I wasn't sitting there being like, yeah, this is the best player in the nation.
Right.
But then again, who's supposed to be better?
Well, do you want to let's just finish it out. Let's not break. Okay. So right now, I think you can make a case that Marvin Harrison Jr. should be. I think you can make a case for either Jordan Travis or Keon Coleman. I think both of those.
I think the fact that you can make a case for both hurts the case for both.
That's okay. That's the thing. And I think given that,
Frankly,
I think Jordan
it's
Travis.
Coleman.
But see, that's the thing. I think the Heisman, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a quarterback, right?
Yes.
And while Coleman, I would agree with you. I think that I would rather see Coleman win it than Travis, but you're going to have people say.
I think Coleman means more to that connection. The problem is I don't think he's going to outperform Marvin Harrison Jr.
Exactly.
Which means
and then you're going to have people arguing, well.
So I don't think either of them is going to win the Heisman. I appreciate you bringing Harrison Jr. into the discussion because like he might be my lead candidate. I think he is such a massive help to a quarterback who is not necessarily at the Ohio State standard.
Yes.
The problem is I still feel like they have to win the game this year for him to win the Heisman.
Right. No, I would agree with that.
Which I'm saying this because I am not a fan of the Heisman Trophy and the way it's awarded. I've been out on that trophy since McCaffrey lost to Derrick Henry.
Completely. I would agree with that. 1,000%.
Real quick, my spiel on that is Leonard Fournette had super similar numbers, like negligibly off numbers on a worse team in the same division of the same conference.
Yes.
Meanwhile, McCaffrey put up better numbers.
And did it in multiple phases of the game.
And you want to tell me that McCaffrey didn't have a worse team around him
Hell
while
yeah,
putting up better numbers? Like, of course he. That's what I'm saying. He's like, you made it too much of a team award.
Yes.
And too much of a brand award with Henry. And I don't feel like they've come back from that.
I agree. And that's what's got me.
Not like Derrick Henry isn't an amazing back.
No, but they were. That was like a super team.
And I just don't think like the Fournette is the bit of that like puts me over the edge of like they can't come back from this because if Fournette didn't exist and didn't put up similar numbers on the worst team in the same division, then it would be tougher for me to be so mad about it.
Okay, and along that same mindset of what's made me not really like the Heisman is Tyrann Mathieu. Dude, at LSU, Tyrann Mathieu was returning kicks left and right. He was causing, he would make the most ridiculous plays you've ever seen on defense.
Okay, what 1 year and who won the Heisman that year?
That would have been his sophomore. It was when it was a sophomore year. He went to number 7 from 14. And, oh my God, I'd have to look up who won. I believe it was, I cannot remember. But he was in the mix, but he did so much. And the fact that he wasn't an offensive player, that just kind of screwed the pooch for me. And then you've had other guys come along. Like, I think you could have made Jadeveon Clowney had a case for it on defense.
RG3 won it.
Yeah.
Yeah, get out of here with that.
No.
Get out of here.
I'm not. That was
the 2011 Heisman.
Whatever. I think Tyrann Mathieu could have had a case for that one.
That is a homer pick.
No. I stand by that. Anyway, I think he could have. But in the mix, yes. RG3 had one good throw against Oklahoma.
I love when guys who aren't typically in the conversation, like positions that aren't typically in the conversation, get into the conversation. But miss me with that one. That was a great year for the Heisman Trophy.
It really. Who else was in there? Do you have the
Andrew Luck?
Yep.
That's all you need to know.
I don't care. So it's 2 quarterbacks. Anyway, so I think as far as other players this year,
Ollie Gordon. Let's start there.
Ollie Gordon should be in the mix. And the fact that he's not so right now On3 has a hot board out. And if you go through and look at it, Ollie Gordon's nowhere near there. Ollie Gordon is putting up numbers that Oklahoma State hasn't seen since Barry Sanders. To me, I think he's making a case to be the best running back in the nation. There's no way in hell.
He's leading the nation in rushing yards.
Oklahoma State would not be even in the remote conversation of winning without Ollie Gordon.
He's only 3 touchdowns off the lead in rushing touchdowns, too.
Yes.
And this is after, he got a slow start.
Yes. And I think if they right now, to me, they don't have a signature win, right? And that's another thing that pisses me off. You could, like, going back to McCaffrey, right? You got to have a signature win somehow to be on this list, which is crap.
Yeah, it's
but if
an
he goes off against
award that
Oklahoma,
just values the team
yes,
outcomes too much, which is part of why I'm amazed, frankly, that RG3 won it, because that team was not like an amazing team.
Correct.
So I digress.
But yeah, no, but
this is not about that.
But I think that you have the perfect storm coming up this weekend for Ollie Gordon, because you are the best back in the nation. Like I said, you're the best back at your school since freaking Barry Sanders, and you're going into Bedlam. It's the final game. If he goes off against Oklahoma and he continues to put up numbers the rest of this year and he doesn't win the Heisman, then that needs to be like revisited and restructured or something, because he would completely get hosed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he's at least got to be in New York for the ceremony,
Yes,
because like that is the level he's on right now. Just because he wasn't hyped coming into the year, just because he isn't at one of the biggest brand colleges, like, man, if this cat goes for like 1,600 yards and is in the top 10 of rushing touchdowns in the nation on that team that had such low expectations and is outperforming them,
he's literally carrying them.
Like I don't know another. He also watch the games. He just looks the part.
His stiff arms are stupid, dude.
He's not shifty like Barry Sanders or anything. Like, he looks more like a power back, but he's got the speed to finish off these long runs. Like, he's a dark horse Heisman guy that like should be getting more love.
Yeah, I think obviously Bo Nix is going to get his. JJ McCarty's, you can throw him in the mix. I think Blake Corum is, like, the fact that he fell off the map this year is kind of strange to me. But yeah, to me, I think Ollie Gordon has the best case. Him and Jaden Daniels have the best case right now, in my opinions. And ultimately, if I had to vote, I would vote for Ollie Gordon.
I think I'd vote for Ollie Gordon. I don't have a vote. Don't really want to.
I know.
Because I can't change that whole award. But if I had to bet on things right now, man, I just don't see them. Even if Ohio State loses the game, I don't see them going past Marvin Harrison Jr. Mm-hmm. I know it's tough to say a receiver's going to win again, just because of how quarterback dominant this whole thing is, which is also what could be holding Ollie Gordon back, because we're in the age of the receiver compared to the age of the running back,
which should make a more of an impressive case for what he's doing.
Yes, I know, but people aren't going to think like that.
I know, and that's the stupid part of it.
Anyway, I feel like we haven't really gotten into the CFP stuff this week. We don't have time.
Yeah, no, we'll do that next week.
The first round of CFP rankings come out tomorrow, I believe. So we'll dive into that next week, and I think it's going to become kind of a weekly recurring thing where we look at the previous week's rankings and we look at the previous week's results and we say, hey, this is what we believe this week's ranking should be, and then we'll be outraged the next week when they're not, because the committee's stupid.
And they'll have some bullshit excuse of why they pick what they do and everything else.
I cannot wait for the conversations of, that's bullshit. My team's ranked 18th and they should be 12th. I feel like that's going to be a hell of a lot more fun. No, honestly,
no,
I get
it.
Because it's going to feel so much less like brand based.
Right.
It's going to feel more maybe conference brand based, but I think I can actually deal with that much easier.
Right.
Anyway, you want to wrap it up?
Yep. So that's going to do it for today's episode. We had a lot of fun, man. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Like we said, make sure you go and hit like and subscribe on YouTube as we continue to grow this bad boy. We're up over 12,000 subscribers right now. Make sure you check out Josh Neighbors and the Neighborhood Watch, as well as what Grayson brings to you throughout the week on the Crystal Ball College Football channel. But this has been the College Chaos Podcast. We'll be back with you again next week. We out.